All right, I'm gonna give you guys a video walkthrough of how to operate the corn stove. In some ways it's like lighting a normal fire, but it is a little bit of an art form. I'm gonna walk through step by step, but just kind of an overview. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes to really make sure that the stove gets running. So before you go through all the steps, I just want to caution you that if you light it, turn it on, and just walk away, it'll go out. So don't do that. Again, you gotta take about 30 to 60 minutes, but if you follow these steps most of the time, it works pretty darn well, and will heat everything up to nice and toasty temperatures. So I'll do step by step here. All right, step one is cleaning out the front chamber. This is where the fire will be made. Usually takes about 20-30 minutes, maybe a little longer for this thing to cool off. So you can't open this thing right away. But after 20-30 minutes, you can open it up, and it's completely cool. You can tell because the front of it's cool. And this is where the fire will happen, but this is the remnant of the last fire that we had last night. So you can see there's a little bit of uncooked corn in here, which is normal, and a bunch of ash and all that stuff. The first thing you're gonna see is the burner box. So I'm gonna put this in my mouth here. Okay. Okay. So the burner box is what I just pulled out. And then the chamber, you can see in here, has a little bit of ash in the bottom of it. If this is super dirty down here, like way too much ash buildup, you're gonna need to vacuum this out. It doesn't look too bad right now, so I'm not gonna do that. The main thing you need to clean is this burner box. It's a pretty heavy metal box that has some uncooked corn. So I have a little bucket here next to the thing with a little sweeper and everything. So you can see the old ash I put in here. So I'm just gonna dump the uncooked corn, and you'll see something else fall out, this big black brick. That's from the last cook. That's called the clinker, which is kind of funny. So you just wanna make sure that this box right here is completely clean. So that's really clean. You wanna make sure there's not like a ton of stuff in there. If the clinker is hard to get out, you can use some tongs or a screwdriver that we have sitting here to kind of break this stuff up. But you basically wanna put this in here and then put this thing back in. And when you put it back in, there's two little pegs at the back. You'll kind of have to slide it back, and you'll feel it click in and kind of hang there. And then you're done cleaning. All right, the second step is fill in the stove, or specifically the hopper, which is in the back part of the stove. So to open this thing up, you see here, this lid slides forward just like that. Pretty easy. And then there's a little hinge door in the back, so you're gonna open that up. And you see right now the hopper is completely empty. It usually isn't completely empty because it burns out before, but I cleaned it out really good this morning. So that's where you put all the corn at. So keep that open. And here in the corner of the living room, we have a metal trash can, if you wanna see over here. Over here. And then we have two buckets, another bucket inside there to kind of help you pick up the corn. So you just kind of scoop up your corn here. And if you want a full hopper, which usually you do, it's about 3 or 4 buckets full of this, depending on how much you get in each bucket. Do that there. And one thing, before I get too much in there, you come over here and look in the hopper. Most of the time, the corn is pretty clean. These are just free kernels, you'll see here. But occasionally, there's little stalks or little sticks or something that end up in here, and you don't want those in here. So as you're pouring each bucket in, a good thing to do is kind of run your hand through it, just to make sure there's no, you can see that kind of stuff. You don't want that in there. If you get enough of that, it'll clog it up, but you definitely don't want like big sticks or anything. So just kind of run your hand through it. That kind of stuff you don't want in there. Remnant of a cob. So just kind of run your hand through it a couple times as you put each bucket in. So I'm gonna do one or two more buckets here. All right. Okay, I'm not gonna fill it completely full, so I'm gonna stop right there. But yeah, just make sure you clean out the sticks. Pull those out. All right, and then whenever you get however much corn you want in here, close the lid and then slide this lid backwards, and you're ready to light a fire. All right, now you're ready to start a fire. So the first thing you want to do is over where the corn is at, there's a little box and it has your starter materials. You see here, it has these little starter starter bricks. These come in squares, and what you want to do is get about 5 of these, and you want to tear them into individual pieces. If you see them kind of ripped like paper, that's really good because that'll help them get started. So you want to get about 5 of these. Should be plenty over there. Break them apart. Sometimes they can be kind of tricky. So I've got 5 here. Grab those. And the other thing you're going to grab, either from the back of the hopper, or you can just get it from the corn thing, is just kind of maybe a handful of corn, maybe about 20 kernels or so. You're going to open up this and put this in the bottom of the burner box right there. So just put a little bit of corn base there, and then take your bricks, your little starter bricks. I like to line them up like this, get some nice, and just kind of put them right in the middle there. And that'll be your starter material for starting your fire. All right, now you're ready to light the fire. At the beginning, you gotta make sure that your stove is off. So you shouldn't hear anything at this point. The stove should be completely quiet. So we got a little stick lighter right here. Makes it pretty easy. Put your stick lighter in there. Light your bricks on top. I'd like to light at least 2 or 3 of them. If you can light all of them, especially if you have good corners on them, that's even better. So make sure you got a good light on all of them. And you can leave that door open just for 5 or 10 seconds, just to make sure they have some oxygen get going. And kind of close your door. All right, so then we're going to close the door, and then I'll show you the next step after that. But the first thing is close your door here and off. There we go. Now it's nice and tight. So your door is nice and tight and your fire's burning inside there. Okay, our fire bricks are going nice now. So we're going to close the door like that. And then we're going to come around to the side here. In the beginning, we had all our settings right, so just you haven't changed anything, so those should all be good. And then we're going to flip this to on. So at this point, you'll hear the air coming into the chamber. And you want to make sure when you come back around here that your chamber, the flame is going really nice now. So that's basically blowing air. If you don't have a good enough flame going when you hit on, sometimes it'll blow out those fire starters. So if that happens, just turn off the stove, open the door and relight them. But at this point, it's going pretty good. So we give that about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, it's been a couple minutes. You can see our fire starters are really roaring there. One thing that helps here is before you get the stove dumping in kernels by itself, which it will do when it gets hot enough, is to get some extra kernels on top. And you can do that by pushing the button on the side. There's a push button called prime on here. You see right there. Push that in and you'll kind of hear some corn. You gotta hold that down for about 10-20 seconds. There you go, you hear that? All right, so you look in there now, and you're holding that button. You'll see some corn kernels coming out and dropping into the chamber. There we go. If the chamber was completely empty, it will take a while to kind of work the corn down. So it was completely empty before. So I'm gonna have to hold this down probably a little longer than normal, but basically you wanna hold this down and then until you see, about 10 to 20 kernels fall on top of those flames that you started, and that'll help get you a good fire started. Okay, you can see now when I'm holding the prime button, some of the kernels starting to fall down in here. And what you're looking for is the kernels to light on fire pretty quickly. So if your fire is really hot, those kernels will catch fire pretty quickly and start burning. So you may need to do this a few times over 10 or 20 minutes. But what you're looking to do is just keep that flame at least at that level, and hopefully over 10 or 20 minutes it'll start building a little bit higher. So if you need to, if it looks like the flame is dying out or there's not enough corn, you can just keep hitting that prime button. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. One thing that you'll see now is that the stove will start feeding the burner box itself. So based on the setting you set over here, which should still be at 2, you definitely don't want to go any higher than that. Once this thing gets a little bit of heat generated from what you did in your starter, it'll just start dumping a little bit in. So you know that it's getting hotter because that's happening. So that's a good sign. And then the next thing we'll wait for is it to get hot enough to start blowing air out of the stove, which hasn't happened yet, but it should take about another 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, it's been about another 5 or 10 minutes, and the fan blowing out into the room just kicked on. And what that means is you got a nice temperature going, you got a nice fire going in there. So this is the first time you're gonna feel air blowing out of this thing, and that's a good thing. Basically, you wanna just kind of keep it just like this for at least another 10 minutes. So it may not be completely piping hot yet. So keep it like this for another like 10 minutes or so. Let your fire get a lot hotter than this. Okay, it's been about another 10 minutes, and I have a really good fire here. So I could probably just keep it at this level for 12 to 16 hours at a 2, a 1 or a 2, and that would be fine. Once this thing's been on and blowing air out into the room, one setting that you'll need to switch it to is over here on the side. Again, you don't want to do this right away when it starts blowing air, but after 10-20 minutes and your fire looks really good, I'm going to come down here and click this to auto off. And you'll notice when you click to auto off, what this does is basically when the fire's done, the whole stove will shut off on its own. If you click it to off, it'll just completely shut off. You don't want to do that. So click to auto off, and you can keep it on autopilot just at that 1 or 2 heat level. You still want to check on the fire every 5 or 10 minutes at least for the first 30 to 60 minutes of starting this, but right now it looks pretty good. Okay, so let's say you want it hotter in the lodge. So the way to get this thing hotter is to turn up the fuel level. So over here on the right panel, you should be at a 1 or 2, like I said, at least for the first 30 to 60 minutes until this thing really gets going. But after it's going good and your fire looks like it's nice and going, you might want to get more corn in there. A word of caution: you can't turn that thing up from 2 to 8 because it will just dump way too much corn in there. So what I would say is every 20-30 minutes you can turn it up 1 or 2. So if you're at a 2 now, you can go up to like a 3 or 4, recheck on it 20-30 minutes. So if you want to get it up really hot to a 7 or 8, which you rarely need to generate that much heat, but if you do, you got to do it really slowly over an hour or 2. The other thing is on your room air, really medium air here is blowing air out into the room, but you can turn that all the way up to high and the fan will blow out a little bit more, but that doesn't really make anything hotter. Okay, one thing that might happen is if you're halfway through making a fire and you look in there and it's not going very good, and I want you to look at my fire here because it's going really good. You'll see red hot embers all across the top there, like the entire burner box is just red hot. But let's say it started kind of smoldering a little bit. You didn't see bright red hot embers where you saw too much uncooked corn. One thing you might need to do is stoke the fire, and kind of like just doing a normal campfire. What that means is you're gonna have to use a tool to kind of poke the box. Now, this is kind of tricky because this thing is blowing air out and you don't want to open the door. You definitely don't want to open the door when the stove is on because it'll blow fire and ash and everything out into the room. So if you want to do that, make sure to turn the stove completely off. So you turn the stove off, and that sometimes when you turn it off, it'll, especially if there's a little bit of flame going, it'll smoke, and that's okay. So I'm actually going to turn mine off right now and let that die down a little bit. So you can see when the air stopped, the flame stopped, so it's going to smoke just a little bit. Then you're going to open up the door, use this, and then kind of poke your burner box. Basically, just mix up all that hot stuff, and then come back around the side, and then turn auto off on. auto off on again. See, I let my fire die out there and then turned it back on. And you'll see once it starts blowing air. So let's say your fire was pretty weak and you did that. What you'll notice is over, 10, 15 seconds, it'll start burning a lot hotter. And then you can just let it ride out like that.